Welcome to I Had No Idea. Safe and healthy use for technology for our kids. There's one kid that benefits from this, if there's one family that benefits from something that we talk about, then the whole thing's worth it. Welcome to the I Had No Idea podcast. We are here to talk about cyber empowerment. We are here to discuss the things about youth and any individuals really who are online, so we can explore the good, the bad, the things we need to know, and what we learn about that makes us say, I had no idea that was even possible. Today, I have Sarah Olson with me. She is a school counselor who I'm going to let tell a little bit more about herself and some of the experiences and things that she is seeing in schools right now relative to technology, as well as maybe her personal experience as a mom. Sarah, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Jeni. I'm really excited to be here. So like you said, I'm a school counselor. I'll start off with, I have been in education for 26 years. I just completed my 26th year, and I have been a counselor at every different level from elementary all the way up to high school. And I've been doing that for 8 years. I've been at a high school for the last 2 years though, and I am currently at a small school in Central Texas. I have about 275 students at the high school, and I'm the only counselor. So I get it all from academic to social emotional, all the post high school planning. Like I get all of that. So when I talk to my kids, I see them a lot and I see them for all different kinds of things. And I really, really get to know them. Even though I'm the only one, I just see them in so many aspects that I really know who my kids are. And that makes a big difference, I think, for me, because I have that connection. So I can see things and talk about things that other counselors might not know because they don't see them on all those different fronts, especially at larger schools.
Wow, that is amazing because to me, it means you get to really form some relationships. And we know in so many different aspects of safety, mental health safety, physical safety, that having relationships is really key, especially when it comes to what we're going to be discussing, and that is using technology in a safe way. Um, Tell me a little bit about the kinds of things. So I'm going to ask two questions, so I'm going to give you time to think about both of them. First, I'm going to ask you what you're seeing today in schools relative to technology, and then I'm going to ask you about how the cell phone ban in Texas schools has gone this year. So we're going to do two parts on that. Tell me what you're seeing in technology today with your kids.
Well, first, it's so hard to keep up with from the language that they talk and how they're constantly changing their words. And you and I have discussed this before personally, like trying just to keep up with their lingo is so hard because once you do, they want to change it. And it's so easy for them to send all of that out because that platform is instant and it is broad. It is across the world, not just the United States. And so things change really quickly. And so I see a lot of vocabulary and a lot of trends and things that when they come into the school, they come in really quick. And sometimes they're also out pretty quick. I mean, we all know about the 6-7 and nobody understands where that came from, but it just took over the world. And so things like that happen really, really fast. And they're not always funny like 6-7, and they're not always positive. And so we see that, or I see that a lot in my office when kids are struggling with things that they're hearing or things that they're seeing online, and they're bringing that to school, and there are other kids that are bringing that to school, and they're having conversations, and they're not always the best conversations because they're getting
Mm,
small pieces and they don't understand all of it, that how
mm,
all these different things go together because they're only getting what was shared out, and so they don't know all
mm.
the information. They just kind of think they do, and they have these really in-depth conversations about things that sometimes don't always lead to the right pathway or to the right thought process. It just changes what they're thinking based on what they're seeing and hearing. And that's, I mean, I see that as a mom. I have two age group of kids. I have grown children in their mid 20s, and then I have teenage children in middle school. So I have both sides of that. So I raised one group of kids without so much technology, and then this second group of child that's coming through is very heavy technology based. Just his friends and everything, they rely on it for all kinds of things.
Oh, wow, that is awesome. And I wonder because that really intrigues me when you say the vocabulary, because we know it's hard to keep up with that. I think I've talked, and I'll probably be talking more. And on our I Had No Idea website, we talk about even emojis that have meanings. There are things that maybe coming across a screen that if a parent was walking by or an adult was walking by, they see cherries, they see an eggplant, they see a taco, they see peaches, and they're thinking, oh, look, they're making a fruit salad. That's not what that's about, right? And there's
Not what
other,
that's about.
that's not what that's about.
No, no.
But let me ask you this, and this is kind of a stretch, but it's on that vein. 6, 7 is silly, okay? It's goofy and it's harmless. Can you recall any kind of a statement that may be thrown around that you can say that adults may not know, but has come across your way as being hurtful or harmful, or just that kind of code language we wouldn't know? And they take it very personally and serious as an insult or a
So
put down.
I know at our school, like sometimes kids say like you should just check out, or
Oh,
they say like I'm checked out, or you should just check out. And really, that has
okay.
a double meaning. It's sometimes it's just like I'm just done with this and I'm moving on. But other times when they're saying I'm checked out, it's like they're having like suicidal ideation. They are checking out. And I
Wow.
think that sometimes we don't, when they say, I'm just checked out right now, I have to really stop myself and say, okay, explain that more to me. Are you checked out like you're not interested? Or are you checked out like you don't want to be here anymore? And so that's a big thing. And then also they say, bro, I'm ready to leave. And that's also another one where they're talking about ready to leave, like they're ready to leave saying that they're struggling with mental health. They're not necessarily saying that I'm ready to walk out of this class. It's not necessarily what they're going with that. So those kind of lingos change really really fast, and when I hear them, I really have to pull them in and start asking a bunch of questions, and sometimes they're just like, calm down, I was just ready to be done with math. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I
Mm-hmm.
just have to check,
Mm,
because it does
yeah.
change so fast. And staying on top of that and being in the middle of that is really hard when I'm not so electronically dependent. I'm not on the same sites they are. I'm not going and
Mm-hmm.
watching the same videos they are. So the age difference and my interest difference are way different from theirs. So I can't stay up with the lingo as fast as they are changing it until a kid tells me,
Wow.
or until I go, that doesn't sound right. Explain it to me.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you doing that because you're right. It can be a scale there. And I say this because I do suicidal prevention training. We have that here where I am at Region 12. But it can be a spectrum of responses. Whenever, and my daughter is a millennial, so she's in that 20 range as your older son is, and the term they used was KMS. KMS, oh man, I'm ready to KMS. Well, KMS back then meant kill myself. And they would say it flippantly. They would say it like I'm annoyed, and that I'm just like, you just gave the example. It's a flippant thing. But we check in with the kids. We check in to say, okay, were you saying that because, like you just said, you're tired of math class, or is there something deeper here we need to look into? And I think those are two important examples for our audience, because someone can be saying that just jokingly, and then someone may be really experiencing something where those statements mean a lot more. It could have a little more gravity. So thank you for saying that. So those are great examples. Screen time with youth. Okay, so
Oh,
tell me
that
about that, Sarah.
So I when I went to this school, and they open phone policy, what the kids could
Mm,
have phones anywhere, whenever. If a teacher said, hey, not during work time or not during class time, then they students were asked to abide by that. But if the teachers didn't have that regulation, then kids were on their phones constantly. I mean, there would
mm,
kids be they would literally answer their phone in the middle of the hallway, or like in between classes walking out, or they'd step out in the hallway in the middle of instruction and take a phone call. And so the teachers had rules, and but the kids, just depending on what teacher it was, knew what they could do. But it was constant, and they were always on the phones. And it was a struggle to kind of get that attention from them when they were, I mean, every 30 seconds there's something new in their face, and something
mm.
interesting, and way more interesting than
Yeah,
math. And
yeah,
so it was
yeah.
it was a constant struggle fighting with that attention, trying to get that attention to give them
Mhm.
what they needed in the classroom. But it was also the kids found themselves anxious, kids that I saw. So I'll just go back to last year with that phone policy, that open policy. I saw a lot of kids that they were struggling academically in the classroom, and they were just really anxious all the time, and they were irritated a lot. And
Mhm.
kind of like ADHD, where they were constantly struggling, trying to figure out what they were supposed to be doing and where they're at. And I just had some long conversations with some of them. And what I noticed on all of them is their screen time. So there's a way on the phone you can change you can check your screen time. So they would come in and we'd talk about it and say, hey, let's look at your screen time. And they were pulling 13, 14 hours a day average on screen time, which blows my mind away because you sleep for like 8 of that and you're in school for 8 of that. So where is this time coming from? And that just shows how they were always on the phone somehow, whether it was texting or an app or whatever they were doing, they were just constantly being connected. And although they were like, it's just mindless, I'm like, but it's might be mindless to you, but your brain is trying to understand everything. And at 30-second intervals, it's really hard for your brain to keep up with that. So they were creating a spastic brain. They just couldn't keep up with things in longer chunks of time in class. And so they're really struggling. So one of the things we did with 2 kids individually, they came for different reasons, but I ended up doing the same thing with these 2 kids. Is I said, let's put some time limits. So you can lock your phone and turn your apps off after a certain time at night. You can lock them during certain times during the day. And so they didn't even know, which I thought was funny that they could do those things because they know everything about those phones. But the parenting side, I knew that about phones. So I showed them how to do that. And then we did screen time limits. So they hit their 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever we decided was a good time frame, and the app shut off and they can't get back in. I mean, you can with a password and all of those things, but I told them just don't try not to. And the first week was really hard for them, but after a couple weeks, they themselves were like, there's a difference. Like I'm not as anxious all the time. I don't feel like I need to be doing something. So they were, finally discovering idle brain, and we called it boredom, and they an idle brain is what they call it now.
Idle brain, new
An idle
term.
brain. It's just kind of sitting there. And so we had this idle brain syndrome where they would just kind of sit there, but it would allow their brain to kind of slow down and kind of take in bigger chunks of things because they're not fighting for attention. And I saw an increase in grades, but I saw them less. And that was my goal, was for
Mm.
them to be able to take their ownership and be able to do things and handle their own situations, but I saw them less. And I had to go track them down and be like, I haven't seen you in a week. What's going on? And they're like, I'm good. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
okay. What's your screen time like? And they're like, I was at 4 hours, but that was just yesterday because there was stuff going on. But it's been 3 hours for my average. And I'm like, okay, sounds great. So there was like
Wow.
some huge differences. And I have seen that move over to this year. So when Texas passed the law for cell phones, it it took that out of the equation. So we didn't have to block phones. The kids aren't supposed to be on them. And every once in a
Mhm.
while, yeah, you catch a kid. That's just, those are kids. Like
Mm.
we passed notes. We still got in trouble for
Yeah,
that too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they're
I
just on a
got you.
phone. But it has really changed some of the dynamics in these classrooms. And
Mm.
I have seen less kids for stress this year than I have last year. And my already anxious kids, my already ADHD kids that I check in with anyways, I I see less of that side of them as well. And I really do think that a lot of it has to do with they know they can't be on their phone, so there's not a constant need to be checking their phone. Whereas
Wow.
before, why not? I mean, there wasn't anything that said you couldn't, so why wouldn't you? And now
Mm.
we really have kind of nipped that in the school system, and I love it. Like I love that the kids don't have that access like they're supposed like they did in the past, and it has
Wow.
really made a big difference for some of them. Now some of
That
them
is
they were like,
amazing.
it doesn't bother me one way or the other, but
Mm.
those kids that were constantly on their phone with 12 and 13 hours a day, it made a huge difference for them, and I can see it. And some might even say, no, it's not the phone thing. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's what we changed.
Yeah, that's what changed. So, okay.
Well,
But
and it's
I just
interesting
love
that we had to kind of go backwards a little bit, and I say that because we didn't know. We didn't know that that much access, that much availability could have the detriment, the mental health detriment, and then sometimes a physical detriment, sleep deprivation or body image, worries, and the anxiety that was going with that. So and you've given me an idea because I always do needs assessments with the counselors, in my region, and then collaborate with my regional counterparts across Texas to just kind of ask the question for everyone: how did it go this year? Did you see more or less of students who presented with some of these needs this year as you did last year because of, or wondering how much this could have impacted that? But we are hearing that there have been cases where students have experienced growth in areas and better academics. And the next question I have is socially. I mean, what does the cafeteria look
Oh,
like now? What do the halls look like now this
so
year as
that
opposed to last
that
year?
is kind of fun for me because kids have to talk to kids. They have to talk to people. So the only if they want to, not do their math work in class, the only thing they can do outside of that is to have a conversation with somebody. And so they were starting to make these connections and finding out
Hmm.
they like things. And I have a big box of games like Uno and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so we would take it down the cafeteria and just set it in the cafeteria, and kids would play Uno or they would play cards. And so they're like eating lunch and then playing these games. Of course, I thought it was funny because I have to teach them how to play Candyland because that's just not a game
Oh
that's really.
no.
So I'm like, no, no,
Oh,
guys,
you're
it really
breaking
is.
my heart, Sarah.
It's just a color. Just go to the color on the card. And they're like,
How
that's it.
great.
I'm like, yes, that's it. So it was kind of fun
How great.
to introduce this. And as the time went on, they didn't check out the games as much. Like they would just sit at the table and kind of talk and hang out. But they was still there, and there's still kids that would come by every time and get my Uno cards. And then they would like bring their own cards or bring their own stuff, and they're playing games. And so it was really kind of cool to see some of those interactions. Um, and then, I mean, just I liked seeing
And you're talking about
pods
high
of
school
tables,
kids, right?
yes, high school kids sitting there playing games. And they were like, well, what else are we supposed to do? And I was like, well, talk to the people at your table. And at first it took a little bit to get used to that again. And so they
Wow.
were like, the way to do it was to just grab a game and start playing cards or whatever it was that they were playing. And then over time it was just conversational. And
Yeah.
I saw different groups of kids kind of hanging out together. They found something of interest that they didn't know they had in another place. And then other
Mm-hmm.
things that I saw it wasn't so interlocked. Like when they would come to lunch, they would sit at one table and just stay. And I saw kids moving all over the place. Like they'd eat their lunch with one group and then go sit with another group and talk to them. And so there was a lot of movement in the cafeteria. And I don't know if it was just like, okay, I'm done talking to them, I'm moving on, or if it's I just need to get up and move and change scenery.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
know which one it was, but it was just kind of fun to watch the groups kind of intermingle. And before
Mm.
it wasn't like that. They sat down, ate their lunch, and then just sat and stared at a phone or whatever.
Wow.
And they're not really doing that now. They're moving around and they're talking to kids more. And I like that social part of it. Just seeing the interactions and things. And that's also, great way, especially as counselors, because you can see like, hey, well, yesterday they were all together and today they're all at different tables. What's going on?
What's
So
going
those
on there?
kind of things are nice to watch too.
They are nice
Yeah.
to watch too. Well, let me ask you, okay, so cyberbullying we know is something that can happen outside of school, after hours, any time of the day. But I wonder what your theory or perspective is, given that you're, I mean, appreciatively paying attention, to how the kids are behaving, reacting, socializing in response to the ban on the cell phones in schools this year. Tell me about bullying or cyberbullying. What kind of, or if you think there's been any movement on lessening that, or has that stayed the same, or we hope not increasing because of
I'm going to
not
tell
having
you on
access.
my side, it's just a little different for me this year because it wasn't brought to my attention very often last year because I mean, it's done socially. And if
Hmm.
someone saw it and they would bring it to my attention, but
Hmm.
otherwise they kind of like, it was kind of like this unwritten rule that you're not going to go tell on other people. And so you would just
Hmm.
get bullied or you would bully somebody else or they would just make this cycle. And so we didn't have a lot of it coming into the school. And now what we see is they're going to they find a different way to do it if they're going to do that. And so
Mm.
they're putting stuff like on Google Documents. So and they can't text in school, so they can open up one Google Doc and they can share it with multiple people so they can text back and
Wow.
forth during
Not
school.
knowing that that's documented and that, you
And
could just bless their
That's what
hearts.
I was gonna say. All we have to do is look at history and we can go back and see everything. And so it's a little different because now we're going like, oh, well, here's everything all on this one
Oh,
Google document. Thank you for making
wow.
that easy. We can
So they
just print
honestly
it.
make that their own chat. I mean, like everybody jumps in and
Yes.
they just say things like they would have in
They
a
all
chat,
you
but
have
they're
to,
using a
like
Google
when we
Doc.
share documents, we'll share a
Little,
document. They share that
wow.
Google document with their friends or with other kids. And so they're just sitting there messaging back and forth and
What's the
they
title of the Google Doc, Sarah? I mean, how does this come across? I mean, wow.
it's just usually just shared. And then there's
Just
always
share.
there's the boyfriend in math class and the girlfriend in English and they're Google Doc talking back and forth and that'll crack us
Wow.
up. So instead of passing notes or texting, they're using Google Docs to get that done.
It's like
I mean,
Gen
there
X
are fun
2.0.
ways.
I mean, we passed the notes. I was only one of them. Well, where
Yeah,
there's a will, there definitely is a way.
they are.
Good grief. Didn't know that.
So I can't say that it's gotten better or worse or anything like
Okay.
that. I can just say that it's what we're seeing, we are actually finding we're seeing. We're not having to rely on kids to come and report and tell us like we are seeing it ourselves. And it
Okay.
really, I mean, I'm at a small school, so we don't see a lot of that anyways.
Yeah.
But those were, I mean, it was very well documented for us. So it was a much easier situation to handle.
Oh, bless them. Okay. Well, and we know to a degree kids will be kids. They need to
Yes.
use kindness and empathy as we want to teach them. Um, that is an interesting. I don't think we've heard of that. Delisha and I are both on there right now. I don't think we've heard. That's a new one. I had no idea right there that we
Yes.
would use Google Docs in schools. So educators and parents listening, Google Doc, they have sharing access to them, and there's definitely ways in schools because they can get access to any device and any content on that device. So
Yes.
uh, how about that? Wow. Well, that's an incredibly helpful insight for us. We haven't come across that yet. So I am glad that there's been that access. I love the idea of just throwing out some games, throwing out some cards, throwing out some things to get conversations, to be able to slow down and be a kid in a way, and to be introduced to something, that may be a time old tradition, but it has value. And um, that's a teachable skill and it's a translatable skill. Many kids are going into the workforce with less and less social skills. So I'm hoping that one of the byproducts of this is to teach conversation, interaction, being able to spend time and laugh in real life. I just don't, there's just no replacement for that. So, talk about good things. Talk about some, because when I do the presentation with kids and I talk about you've used social media all your young lives in these covert kind of ways to be away from the adults that you want to see what you're doing, but you're going to go into a stage of your life where you do want employers, college admission specialists, people who are going to do a social media background check for you. And there's some guidance that says to start a LinkedIn profile as early as 14 years old or 15 years old to just start building for people to visibly see the good things you're doing. And kids don't know, what LinkedIn is or the app
Right.
Zeme. What are some of the good things, or what do you think we could do to give healthy options or ways kids are interacting that have been good? Because there are kids that they do pay attention to danger, or they do say, I'm starting to do this a little bit better with my social media and my gaming. Have you seen any instances of that?
So we do that. I go into the classrooms when I can. Being the only counselor, it's hard to get in there. But when I do, one of the things we talk about, I especially talk about with my sophomores and my juniors, is I talk about like if you're wanting to play sports or do anything after high school or even go straight into the workforce, they're going to be looking at social media. You need to clean it up. Be careful of what you're
Sure.
posting. And of course, they're always like, it's on private. And I was like, well, that's funny because I saw what you did last weekend and you and I are not friends. Like, so it's really not as private as you think it
Oh,
is. And I always make those kind of statements that all it takes is one person who is in your group to repost what you posted with your name on it.
right.
And now you're in that search when I start to Google you. So just be careful of those things and watch what you say. And then when they're freshmen, I give them a resume template
Hmm.
And at the end of the year, I just asked them to go in and just update all of their information. And I said, even if you don't think it was a big deal, put it on there, because when you start applying for scholarships your junior and senior year, or even colleges, you're going to ask for letters of recommendation. You're going to be wanting to send resumes out to colleges. And this is like a one-stop shop. I've done everything all these years, and it's in one
Yeah.
place. And you can just share that document with the teacher and say,
Hmm.
here's what you need to know that I've done. Or you can just share it
Hmm.
into a Google Doc, and turn it into an actual resume. And so it's just kind of like a list that we keep up of all the great things that we've done. And then there's a note side on it, like what's something you want to work on for next year. Like you're like, oh, I didn't do a lot of community stuff this year. How can I do better? And we talk about some of those things. And I think the kids having those conversations and putting those things on there is really great for them to
Good.
have their own personal resume that they're building, but to be able to share
Yeah.
that and say, hey, what do you think? um, with the teacher or with an organization, National Honor Society, we have that. And so they can take that resume and just shoot it right to her and say, here's what I've been doing
Good.
the last year or 2 years before being accepted. I was already doing community service. I'm
Hmm.
already
Hmm.
active at school, and some of
Hmm.
those things that they really want. So I'm real big on building that resume like freshman year. Let's start with that and move forward. And I'm real big about trying to make sure that they understand that private doesn't necessarily mean private. That I mean, I can get copies of anything those kids do. All I have to do
Yeah.
is ask someone else, and they will gladly give it to me. And
Oh,
especially if they're
wow.
not friends, they're like, "Oh yeah, I can get that for
Oh,
you. Come on here,"
no.
and they'll send it to me right away. So those kind of things is what they don't understand can still happen.
Hmm.
But I do remind them that, just keeping things clean is a big deal. My oldest son, when he went to college, they actually gave him a piece of paper, and it had platforms I had never even heard of. And it said, what's your handle on all of these platforms? And so he had to go in and fill out his name on each of them. Of course, they were
Wow.
like, he only had three, and they said, are you sure? Because we'll find them. And he was like, no, that's really, it's like, I don't do a lot of social media. And
Wow.
they came back and they were like, yeah, we only found you on those three things. And it was open. And I told him, I said, don't make it private. It's like, make it public, because what are you saying that you shouldn't be saying? If it's public,
Yeah.
you kind of worry about what you say, and you think about it
Yeah.
before you post that. and
Yeah.
and everybody can see what's going on. And so don't put things on there you don't want people to know or to see about you. And
Hmm.
all of his stuff was public, nothing was private. And so it didn't take them much time to figure out who he really was. And
Hmm.
they couldn't find anything else because there wasn't anything else. And so that was one of the things they looked at, but they definitely looked at that. And
Wow.
I mean, they had a guy, all he did on staff was just Google people and search their handles. I was like, wow. But they wanted to make sure what was coming to their school was what they wanted. And I can appreciate that.
Well, and it's going to be more that AI is involved in screening
Mhm.
for colleges, for jobs, for different types of very competitive work. Those screens are not even going to be humans looking at that anymore. So it will find anything, just like you said. And we do, I have a slide in my deck presentation for the students, and it's the Jumbotron. I could put the Jumbotron test out there, guys. If it's not something you want on a Jumbotron, rethink how you want that put out there, because you just pretend that you own the Jumbotron, okay? Or that you don't really own it because the platform does. But what you put out there is not just going to go to one person, even if it's a text, or you're just shooting it to somebody. That could be screenshotted. That could be shared around all over the place. So in our last piece here, just as we kind of start to cap everything off, you and I have spoken before about your insights as a mom. So you're kind of going to put your mom hat on right now. Tell me about gaming. Tell me about what your interactions have been. And the hard part, especially for me as a mother, now grandmother, is how wide open potential predatory advances are. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe tell your story, and then finish it with, what do parents need to know about these things?
Yes. And I'm going to say, first of all, when you came and did your presentation for us, I absolutely loved it. And the kids really loved it. There was things that they hadn't heard before, even as seniors and juniors, like they didn't realize some of the things you were saying, they didn't realize that that's
Mm,
how that worked, or that those kind of things. And when you talk about they're too old for predators now, that's not the right age group. It's the
mm,
younger siblings. I can tell
mm.
you, I have seen that as a parent. So with my older kid, when Fortnite came out, he was probably about 10, 11 years old, and we allowed him to play it. And we allowed him to play it in groups. He could play one game a day because that takes about an hour. So we,
Which one are you talking about? Which platform?
Fortnite, just the game
Yeah, okay,
system
okay,
Fortnite.
Fortnite.
And
Got it.
so they played that. He would play that in a group setting, and there would be, side chats going on, and
Mhm.
there would be every once in a while just like a hey, like you would get to know somebody online, and they would be like, hey, I'm going to play again tomorrow at 3, and you would log on and they would be there and you would play with them, or you might have a side chat going on with them. And that was, in my mind, that was harmless. He was making friends all over the place.
Mhm,
Now that
mhm.
was, 10 years ago. He's 22 now. And so
Okay.
those kind of things. And I don't think that exists anymore. I think that now it's a way different platform. And I'm just using Fortnite. I know there's lots of games out there that this happens with, but that's my experience is that one. So when my 22-year-old went off to college, his brother was still at home. He was 9, and they played. He would watch him play growing up and all of that. So they would play. And so I allowed them to get online and play together. So a 9-year-old playing online. And I went over all of the things like, hey, look, we're not going to go into private chats. We're not going to talk to people we don't know. And he really wasn't interested until he was about 10 years old or so, like after a year. And they would still play online together. So they would get online and they would play. But I would still always go through like, we're not doing this, we're not doing that, just because I know things are
Mhm,
out there, and I don't want
mhm,
a 10-year-old to have to find out the hard way, nor do I want him
mhm.
to be kind of duped into something, and then not
Gotcha.
feel like he can't talk to me about that because he
Mm,
feels
mhm,
stupid or embarrassed or
mhm,
whatever feeling
mm,
he's feeling. So we went
mhm.
through all of these things, and um, so my two sons were playing, and
Now, your older
they
son was
were.
in college at this time, right?
Yes. And he was in college.
Okay.
He was actually in another state in college. And so they were playing online at the same time, and they were playing the game together. And, they're kind of watching each other's back and like taking care of each other. Big brother's like shooting the people that's trying to get his little brother. And so like he was really kind of like watching him. And then this guy started talking to them in the game, like, hey, what's going on? And they were just kind of like chatting and stuff. And it was pretty harmless at first. And then it was my brother was like, yeah, the older brother was just like, yeah, my brother and I are fine. You can, like we're just, and he's like, well, let's team up. And then at the end, we'll just, then we can duke it out. And he was like, that's, we're not really doing that. We don't play this way. And we're just kind of having fun. It's just how we connect since we're apart. And then the guys just started talking to my younger son, who at this time was 10 and in 5th grade. And he's talking to him. And my older son was like, hey, bro, really, you can leave. We're good. We don't need you around. And then he kind of ignored my older son altogether. And he sent a chat to my younger son directly to him and was trying to get him to talk to directly to him. And he was saying things like, hey, I've got some skins I can just send you, but you have to come into a
Oh.
private chat with me because I don't want to put my codes out there. I don't want people to see it. And so my younger son was like, oh my gosh, I really like that skin. Like he was all excited for a moment. He thought he was going to get a part of this game. And my older son was like, nope, we're
Mm.
not doing that. You need to leave us alone. He's telling his little brother, like, nope. And he was like, get out of the game or I'm going to shoot you myself. Like, get out. We're done. We're not going to do this. And he actually ended up calling me about the same time that I'm, walking by
Wow.
the room, and I can hear my younger son talking to somebody, and it wasn't my older son. And so
Oh,
my older
wow.
son calls me and is like, Mom, there's this guy and he is talking to my brother and he won't leave him alone. Like he needs to get off the game. And so I just came in and was like, nope. And I just unplugged it and turned it off. And I said,
Wow.
and we went over again. And he was like, no, he was going to give me a skin. Like he was so innocent as a 10-year-old. And I was like, and it could have very well have been. I'm just going to give you
Mhm,
something, but it might
mhm,
not have been. And I said, but that's how it
mm,
starts. And I'm not going to let you do that. So we just kind of left the games. And so now he plays private games. He will only play with just a group that we know. He doesn't get to play
mhm,
the online version anymore. And I
mm,
think part of that, me as a parent, I was like, I just trusted in the fact that I told him so everything was good. And And then I had to realize, well, it wasn't that way with my older son. Well, 10 years ago, it was very different
Very
in the
different.
platforms.
Wow.
And now I do have to be more cautious. And so I definitely watch a little more at what he's doing. And now he's 12. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I want you back on it yet. Like I'm still doing that mom
Mm,
brain of going, I don't know, I don't want you to fall for something because he's innocent. And I can tell him all the things, but I don't want to scare him. But he's
yeah.
still innocent. And I don't want to
Yeah.
take that from him as a parent. But on the
Yeah.
counselor side, I'm like, you need to know what people can
Mm-hmm.
do out in the real world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it starts on the internet. They might not be right next to you, but that doesn't mean that they can't do damage because they're not physically with you. And
Mm-hmm.
those conversations have happened a lot in my home, but they've also happened a lot in as a counselor when kids come in and like, oh, I'm talking to
Mm-hmm.
this guy on YouTube. And I'm like, no, what? No, no, that's not good. That's not good. So
Yeah.
I have that counselor perspective of I know what can happen. And I have that parent perspective of protect my kid, but don't scare them. And so it's hard to know what's okay, what's not okay. And I just kind of limit things. I do a lot of limits with him.
Yeah.
So he
I appreciate that. I mean, I just think how amazing is it and lucky and glad that your older son was available and engaged and he was able to run interference to be the older brother and to help with that. And you saw this. You saw this during the presentation when I talked to the kids about, and I talked to the older kids about that as them being trapdoors. I never want a kid to feel like they are being bad or they are a bad person because these kinds of situations exist and there are individuals who engage youth this way. The hardest part I have, and this is one thing that I have not talked to a teenage audience yet, okay, out of doing this, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, over the last over my career of doing this. You are right. I talk to the older kids, and I will say to them, and there are parents who are going to be listening to this, and I'm going to say this to you. There are teenagers who have younger siblings who innocently, because they don't see this as dangerous either, will help younger baby brother or sister, 9 years old, 10 years old, 8 years old, whatever, put a phone, put a game on their phone, an app on their phone. Maybe they hook them up through something so they can have fun the way that the older brother or sister is doing, and they believe it's completely harmless and innocent
yes.
until they realize that the youth, even younger than your middle school and high school, are actual target ages now. And they are even less equipped with the ability to discern that and to know that that is not good for them. It could be dangerous for them. And I elicit the help of the teenagers. The way I say it is if this is something that you've done, you're not a bad person, first of all, but you've got to at least be that protector for them. If not, come clean to your parents and say, I did download Roblox in this certain way, or I did download, yeah, I did, and I don't want them to get hurt. Let me, how can we fix this to protect them too? And I ask for their help. I don't beat them down about it, but I don't want even one kid to fall into that trap door where they, like you said, through their innocence, they are approached. Um, so I'm thankful to your older son for helping and what you went through as a parent, because we all feel that way about safety for our kids in real life or online. Um, and it takes us having the conversations. And like you said too, we're the counselors. We could scare anybody with some of the stories and the things that
Yeah.
we've seen and done and know. So it does take a balance for that. I just appreciate everything that you've done as a mom. Like, and Sarah and I go way back for having conversations. I'm passionate about this, and she is as well. It's why I appreciate you so much for being on our podcast today. I think there's so many gems of information. I mean, I'm sitting here going, I had no idea. Um, so thank you for that and the great work you do. And all of we have so many champions for students in our schools for safety and helping kids to grow up through our school system. So thank you for doing that. And we will wrap that up. I do want to point everybody back to the resources that we want to provide for you through I Had No Idea CE.com. That's www.ihadnoideace for cyber empowerment.com, where we have free resources for you. We're constantly adding and learning more. Sarah, thank you for your time today, darling. I
Yes,
appreciate you.
ma'am.
And
Oh,
we'll wrap
Jenny,
up.
I just love what you guys are doing over there. And I love how you get the message out, and your presentations, absolutely wonderful. The parent version, the kids versions, absolutely wonderful. And I am just so thankful that you came to our school, and that you met with our kids, and you were able to talk to every high schooler. And it does make a big difference because they had conversations after that. And that's what I like hearing. And even if it was just, I already knew all that. And I'm like, yeah, I bet you didn't. But I still love that there was conversations that was taking place. And so I
Good,
just really
good.
appreciate that. And I appreciate your platform, and all the resources you guys have out there, and all that information that's literally just a phone away. And it's amazing what's there, but it's also scary to think of what is out there that we don't know. And with you bringing light to it, it just makes it so much easier for us as counselors and as parents to have the information that we need. So I just really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sarah.